What's up? It's Mike Mal, and you are listening to the Athletor Podcast, where we dive into the processes, mindsets, strategies of some of the most successful athletes and coaches from all walks of life. Athletor Podcast coming at you. This week's guest is Steve Garland, head coach of UVA. And if you don't know anything about Steve Garland or where he came from, you are going to be really floored by some of the stories that he tells about the way he grew up and the way he came through the sport. We also talk about things that are going on in the sport right now, like the parenting situation, how some parents are really failing their kids and their kids are becoming ill-equipped as human beings moving on through life. Don't go anywhere, because I'm telling you right now, Steve Garland puts on one of the best podcasts that we've had in a very long time. Athletor Podcast coming at you. Athletor Podcast, Coach Steve Garland. Thank you. Forget about me. Thank you so much for having me on, man. We're stoked to talk to you.
Well, hey, this is an honor for me. I've been watching you guys kind of Instagram stalking you for a while, and admittedly been jealous. I'm a jealous dude. Okay, I've been jealous my life, and I started catching feelings when I didn't get an invite. And then when we bumped into each other in Atlanta, I was honored when you told me I could do this. So
yeah, forget about that. I have so many questions for you, and here's where I want to start. You're an interesting guy to me in a lot of different ways. In the way of, like, you were running and gunning and running at a real high level through high school and college. And then you took a little bit of a step back in terms of your life.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me, can you give us a brief history of, like, the way you went about things as an athlete and the way you kind of go about things as a coach now?
Man, I didn't know you were going to go with that one first. That one's deep. So I wasn't prepared for that, but I'll tell you, look, here's the bottom line. So I was raised, I have 8 Irish Catholic uncles and aunts on one side, and all of them go really hard. Everything they do, they're as hard as they possibly can. So, like, my Uncle Ed, for example, is one of my heroes in my life. He's the only Garland that didn't have a drinking problem or does have a drinking problem. He's like one of the guys that just never touched it. But what he did was channel it into heavy machinery. He operates heavy machinery. He's as blue collar as it gets. And just the other day, I got a text from my cousin, Jojo Belfiglio, and he told me, he said, he goes, he can't get any more New York than that. You know, he goes, Uncle Ed, I just saw Uncle Ed, man, and he told me that he's going to die on the work site. They're never getting rid of him. Like, it's just like, that's the kind of people I grew up around. My father, in all seriousness, actually ultimately ended up dying from alcohol abuse. He basically drank himself to death over a long period of time. But that dude went hard when he was drinking. He was going hard. And so those guys were my heroes. When my Uncle Steve, the one I'm named after, was a fighter. I heard a lot of, like, Yankee Stadium growing up, you know, all the grandkids in the back of the station wagon, and he's scrapping, fist fighting a dude at the gas station, you know, and those are like my heroes growing up. So I didn't get into wrestling until 7th grade, but those were the guys I wanted to be when I grew up. And I think I had the grind mentality. My mother, Ann Barbario was her maiden name, and her whole family ran restaurants, Italian restaurant business. So think about the grind. My grandfather comes over from Italy, and
it's nonstop,
and just starting a restaurant business, which is the hardest business, one of the hardest businesses in the world.
Absolutely.
100%. Especially a family run business. And so I think I had that instilled at me at a young age. And then I didn't touch alcohol until after I lost in the state finals for the 2nd time in a row, my senior year. I actually kind of lost my mind, to be honest with you. I put everything I had into this and couldn't have worked any harder, probably, and lost. I blew it. And I remember losing my mind afterwards. And I was in Hotel Syracuse, is where it used to be back in the day. And I remember an older dude who I looked up to was like, "Here's what you need, man, hit that." And he handed me a beer. And, you know, what followed after that was probably 10 years of bondage to alcohol. And like you said, running wild, shoot, that's like an understatement. I mean, me and my twin.
I was being polite.
Yeah. Me and my twin brother and some of the dudes I rolled with back then were running hard with everything we did. And ultimately, you know, my brother actually ended up doing 7 years in federal prison, and I won't get into details there, but, you know, he did his time and he's out now and he's doing great. But, you know, that path, I mean, thank God, literally, I mean, I don't mean that to be sort of cliche or corny, but God, that he put me on the path with wrestling and Cornell University and Rob Cole and UVA and all the things that he did for me and put me on this path, because there's, you know, I got to do a prison ministry thing where I got to go speak to some guys in jail and talk to them about, there's the only difference between me and you is God's grace. I mean, I was going down the same road, I wasn't selling drugs or using drugs, but I was doing crazy stuff that could have gotten me other stuff, you know, and the wrestling was, we'll put it like this. I put the same crazy grind into wrestling, and then wrestling became an idol in my life. So when I got to college, especially my junior and senior year, I was completely obsessed. I mean, like absolutely off the rocker, you know, like I remember, you know, at NCAAs, and this is not the right attitude to have, but I remember thinking, what's the point of living if I don't place? Like, what's the point of living if I don't win this thing? What's the point of living if I'm not an All-American? Like, what I honestly, like, those are the warped, when you go too far with it and wrestling becomes an idol and it stops becoming something that you love and you're trying to honor God with your gifts and talents, and you're just, when it becomes that psychotic, yeah, you may win. And I won. I mean, I made it to the finals and had some good wins, but I also was completely empty. I was totally lost and hopeless.
Even after the wins, it doesn't matter.
Oh, no, it makes it worse sometimes, because here's the feeling. I in the NCAA finals, I got to where I finally wanted to be, and I was in this position to potentially win a national championship. And I remember being completely alone. I remember feeling, at least, one of the worst empty feelings of my life before I went on stage, because I realized nothing had changed. I'm still me. I got to figure out me. I'm still the jacked up little crazy dude that I was 10 minutes ago. This hasn't changed anything. And by the way, all the people that truly love me, they all still love me. They're going to love me no matter what. You know what I mean? Like that. Why wasn't I thinking about that? You know, I'm thinking about, if I don't get this, no one's going to look at me a certain way. And my brother's not going to think I'm tough. And my mom came all the way from New York and she had no money. How'd she basically hitchhiked to get out here. And that's a whole nother funny story in and of itself, how she even got to nationals to come see me that year, because she didn't have anything. She was a secretary and a waitress with 3 kids and no husband, and was just battling to get out there just to see me. The fact that my father had never seen me wrestle in college ever, never seen me wrestle ever. And he just randomly shows up for the NCAA quarterfinals, just like pulled into St. Louis. Like, to this day, I have no idea exactly how he got there, because he was living in a trailer park in California at the time. And so it's like, that's the crazy Garland sort of, you know, G-rated version of a dude that was poured everything into wrestling, but it was good and bad, to be honest.
Okay. And I did want to go here, and I did want to go here quickly, and here's why. It has been a bit of a mission for me. I owned a wrestling club in the state of New Jersey from 2005 to 2016. And between the years 2012 to about 2019, I was on average losing 2.5 kids a year to drug and alcohol abuse, whether that be suicide, whether that be overdose, whether that be whatever. Okay. So almost 3 kids a year for, you know, the better part of 6-7 years. And that will make you stop and take survey of what you're doing. Now, I wasn't a big drug and alcohol guy, but I drank, but I don't, like, you know, I never did drugs really and anything like that. But I did know that there seemed to me to be a higher likelihood of dependence upon drugs and alcohol in the wrestling community. Okay, I think it's just a little higher, and I think it's because of what you're talking about, the idolization of the sport, the mentality that goes into it. Is that something that you have found, is that wrestlers are more prone to addiction?
Man, that's a great question. I think that athletes in general, I think it's an identity thing. I think it's a misplaced gift. Here's what I'm saying. So I think I got a lot of good gifts from my family as well, like the work ethic, the passion, the myopic focus. Like when I get locked in on a task, I'm almost to the point where nothing else in the world exists. You know, and I can get to that when I got the job here in 2006, how I applied that to the job and we got better, but I almost lost my wife over it because I was so obsessed with the job. I'm like, totally forgot I got a kid and a wife at home. How silly was I? You know, like, you know, that type of thing. But and so here's what I'm getting at is like, you turn these beautiful gifts that God gave you, like for a wrestler, strength, speed, mental toughness, perseverance, whatever those gifts are, and you turn them into a goal. Well, the goal's not your why, the goal's a goal, but people make the goal the why. For example, in my life, I have to be this or else. That's not healthy, right? Instead of being like, wait a second, you know, what if I could go back in time to the NCAA finals, my senior year in college, and be grateful and say, Lord, you brought me here, all the stuff you give me, every gift I have is yours. You've given it to me. Let me pour it back. Let me honor you with that. Let me go out there and instead of worrying about the result, let me actually honor you with the way I max out on what you've given me. And the way I do that is with my fight, with my effort, with the, using that speed you gave me and all these things. And by the way, trusting you that the result is yours regardless. Even if I lose, and you know what, you're sovereign over that too. What if I did that? What would that look like? And then what if I lived my life like that? What if I woke up every day with a higher purpose to say, okay, is today's goal to win an ACC championship in 2025? Or is it to, again, maybe I'm going too far with my faith and being too vocal, but it's like, or is it, Lord, I want to please you today. I want to honor you. I want to love you with all my heart, which is my will. I want to love you with all my soul, which is the very essence of who I am. And I want to honor you with my strength, all my might, which is basically time, gifts, talent, tithe, everything I've got all in for this. And if I do that, ultimately good things are going to happen anyway, hopefully. They may not, but that's what I'm in control of and so what I think happens, a lot of wrestlers put all this stock instead into, if this is quote, who I am, I'm a wrestler. And then when they struggle with that, especially in college, I'll say this, that's, I got 25 years experience going on in this world. They lose their minds when it doesn't go well because that's who I am. Well, then who am I? If I don't have that, what am I? Sure. Right. And then so they're not equipped to deal with those things as they come. And then they do turn to alcohol. They do turn to girls. They do turn to fighting. They turn to other things that then to try to fill that giant hole through the center of them that none of those things can do. Does that answer the question?
Yes. So that's kind of where I ended. So here was I had the idea to do a documentary about this subject. And it kind of got bastardized a little bit. The Flow took it and turned it into not that Gregor Gillespie, the name of the film that came out was Fight of Your Life. It was Gregor Gillespie, and I had a big part in making that. But the concept to me was kind of bastardized along the process, and I get it. Like they had to sell tickets to it. They had to get eyeballs on it, and one of the ways to get eyeballs on it is to have a guy like Gregor Gillespie, who did struggle through, drug and alcohol abuse and did come out the other side and is doing well now. But my real intent with the project was to ask the very simple but complicated question, which is, does wrestling attract addictive personalities or does it create addictive personalities? And I think it's probably a little bit of both. Okay. It probably is a little bit of both, right? Because you have to be a little bit of a nut just to do what we do. But I also think that, especially growing up when we did, there was a lot of what you're talking about, a lot of that idolization, a lot of that goal is my why being instilled in us by a lot of coaches. And you can argue where that kind of came from. Was it the Gable mentality that was bastardized by him? And he, and Gable was talked about it at length. Like, hey, a lot of these young youth coaches and these high school coaches took what I said and went way further and they didn't look at the nuance that I was using to talk to these kids and deal with kids on an individual basis. And so I think what happened was, and I'd like for you to expound upon it, please, is we were taught at a pretty young age that our toughness, we can hang our hat on that as human beings. Our physical gifts, our ability to endure, are these things that we're allowed to hang our hat on as human beings. When in actuality, now you look at Kyle Snyder. I literally saw him get pinned in the World Championship Finals by Sadulayev in less than a minute. And I asked him, "What are you gonna do?" He's like, "I'll probably get a milkshake." I'm like, "What?" What? Like I was more upset than him. But sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's a perfect example, though. Kyle Schneider, I always tell my guys, if the why's not right, nothing's right. His why is rock solid. So his why was not tainted by a loss or by getting pinned. His why is rock solid. And so when your why is rock solid, you have a foundation you're not on sand that sinks and gets wet. And then you go under, you have a firm foundation. If the why is not right, nothing's right. And I think that, I think wrestling, it does, look, most, myself included, a lot of wrestlers are obsessive compulsive. We're extremely myopic. We're also ADHD to the max. All of us 100%. Are on acid, and because of the what we're doing. The other day, like I walked by our lacrosse team here is like 50,000 time national champions, and their coach is amazing. I was walking out of our lift and I saw their practice, and they're frolicking, and the sun is shining, and they look so happy. People are cheering each other on, and
I don't get that.
And then in our practice that morning, we had an 8 a.m. and we're going hard, and dudes are punching and bleeding, and it's like, it can be fun. Don't get me wrong, and it is, but not all of it's fun. When you're on bottom for half an hour in a grind match, that's not that fun, right? It's like, so I remember thinking though, but you know what though, you can get to a place where that is what you love though, and you can get into a place where it's a healthy love, where it's a healthy, and that's the thing. I think that's what happens with substance abuse is, I think you try to fill a hole with something that can't fill it. You try to get purpose from something that can't provide it. You try to get hope in something that can't. And then you self-medicate with different things. It could be Netflix, man. Video games nowadays are just as addictive as anything. And I think it's a masking agent. Praise God, I never got into video games. I've never played, never done. Like, I'm not my thing.
I know myself. I won't do it.
Yeah.
So it just as an aside, I remember on a PlayStation 2. Okay, so I know I'm dating myself, and Joel is giggling in the background. But on a PlayStation 2, I remember I got off of work. I was like 21 years old or something like that. I got off of work on a Friday afternoon or evening. I was working at a restaurant, and I sat down, and it was Sunday, and I'm like, okay, we're done with this. Like, we are done with this. Like, that's it. No more. Because like, I know where this goes. It's the same thing as a drug addiction. It's the same thing as alcohol. It can be gnarly. But okay, and back to, I guess, my original question. Do you think that a lot of the youth coaches and high school coaches, when we were growing up, were preaching that type of behavior?
Well, I think, they were doing, I think they were, you sort of coach how you were coached. So I was born in 1977. When I started wrestling was in the late 80s. So it was a different time, My coach, for example, in 7th and 8th grade, me and my brother were running with some dudes that were getting they were going down a crazy path. They took care of us, so they were great to us, but there were some things going on. And long story short is, one of our friends who was like our hero at the time in 8th grade got shot a couple blocks from our house. He got shot 9 times, point blank range. These 2 kids took turns shooting him with a handgun. They were passing the gun back and forth. And my point is that woke everybody up, and woke me up specifically. I'll talk for myself, is I realized I wasn't as tough as I thought I was. I realized I didn't want to be a gangster. I was scared the crap out of me. And my coach yoked us up, me and my twin brother, and he slammed us against the wall, and he said, hey man, like, you guys want to be so tough? I'll take you to the Bronx and leave you for dead. I'll take you there. We lived an hour from the Bronx up to Major Deacon. He's like, we'll take you there and leave you there. Or you can come with me in that wrestling room, and I'm going to do something with you. I'm going to make you a state champ. And, sorry to get emotional, but that moment,
it's good.
That moment changed my life, man. I wasn't serious about wrestling. I didn't start wrestling until 7th grade. I didn't even know any moves. I was just mean, like I like bleeding. It's like weird. It's like, but it's like, he gave me direction in that moment, and he called me out. He called my bluff. He's like, you don't want to do this. You want to do this. And that was it. I was all in. And so what I'll say is that toughness level, though, that bravado, that man, he could have done it too. He's a tough dude. I'm like, I'm listening to this guy. Like, first time I ever met him, he was walking through the housing project with a pit bull and a weapon because he had just been in a huge fight. His head was bleeding all over the place. Coach Keys, man, Randy Keys, bleeding all over the place. And I was like, that's who I want to be when I grow up. So it was like, so my point is that he was in my life at the right time, but that can go too far. To your question, I think it can also go way too far. And so the whole tough guy thing, it took me till 30 years old before I finally figured out that's not the way. You can be a tough guy and a great father and a great husband and a great friend and a great coach without any of that nonsense. And I didn't know that until way too late in life. And so when I'm trying to preach to my guys and anybody that I get a chance to speak to, sometimes I get a chance to speak around the country, and I always hit that head on. Is that doesn't mean you're a tough guy, and some of the toughest people I've met, the Kyle Schneiders of the world, for example, are the ones who exhibit the most humility, the most power under control. Those are the guys that up to the most.
Yeah, I got to tell you, man, it's been an absolute beacon of light following what you're doing from the other side of the country. But it's really been nice to go, okay, there are some coaches out there that get it. Because, Coach, I'm going to be honest with you. There's more than a handful that don't. They don't get it, and they're still running and gunning under the assumption that if we run these kids into the ground, well, some of them will wake up and get tough, and some of them will not, and they'll just fall by the wayside. And they let those kids consume themselves with the sport in a way that I think is completely unhealthy. There's a lot of them, Coach. All right, let's turn to a slightly more lighter subject. I have heard some stories about you, and we're going to get past the drugs and alcohol and that kind of stuff, but this will exemplify your one-sidedness, your ability to get through. Tell me about the weight cut for your senior year at NCAA's, because I've heard some wild stories about it.
Oh, man. Who ratted me out, man? I'm trying to think who that would have been. No, I think I know who it was, but I won't say his name. I think I know who it was, but he's a Jersey guy. Who told you?
He's a Jersey guy.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So I mean, look, this is going to sound like an oxymoron. I was a huge 125 pounder. Sounds insane. But I mean, for my weight class, I was actually really tall. I remember I used to joke with Mueller when my boy Mueller, I was coaching him. I would stand over and be like, I wrestled your weight class, right? And by the way, I wrestled 118 scratch for 3 years.
Right.
Like I was even lower than you, dog. I was 7 pounds, and I'm like, a good head taller, and at the time I actually had muscles. I don't have much muscles anymore. I mean, it was just brutal, dude. I mean, and I was just telling somebody this today. I think I was telling Jack Mueller this today about I was proud of this kid, Kevion Roller, on our team, who's come down to 125, and he's doing it perfectly. And when you make really hard decisions, small decisions over a very long period of time, right? Consistency, it actually toughens you up and creates a lifestyle that just becomes who you are. Well, that's what happened. Truly, that my senior year, I had to change everything. I mean, broke up with the girlfriend. Like, all I'm doing is eating this. I'm keeping a food journal. I'm keeping a training journal. I'm writing thoughts down. I mean, every single day was purposeful. Back then, we used to have to break film down by VHS tape. Remember that?
Yes.
Like I would borrow VHS tapes from people, and I would study film. And my boy Rothy, who was an All-American here the year before I was, he was my teammate, workout partner. He would send me stuff. And then Jim Harshaw would send me stuff, and I would study my opponents. And the weight cut, though, was a lifestyle. It had to be. It was an everyday thing. Like when all my buddies on Sunday would get pizza or wings or whatever, not even close, wouldn't touch it. There was no such thing as a cheat day for me. I saw that as weakness. I saw that as that's just being soft. That's you. That's a mental construct. You're convincing yourself you, quote, need something. Right. And but still, even with all that, I was still huge for the weight.
Right.
I mean, so at Nationals that year, it just got to the point where I was just holding on for dear life. And I think I was 3.5 over, a half an hour before weigh-ins. And back then there was a different culture. My coaches weren't around to help me. No one's working me out. Now everybody's got a guy. Like you have like an old entourage when you go to Nationals. Back then it was like, figure it out, stud. So not that they
we're going to the coaches social. See you soon.
Yeah, woo, they're like hungover. Like nobody. I love them. They're my boys to this day. But no one was running next to me, making sure I got down the weight. You had to figure it out. And anyway, I grabbed the guy you're talking about, who probably told you the story, and begged him. I'm like, you got to help me, man. I'm dying. And he did. He helped me. He actually drilled with me right there on the mat and got me down to weight, and I ended up making it. But I remember me and Strip Matter walking to the scale. I mean, maybe this is just in my head, but I remember us both just like almost not being carried. I don't want to be dramatic, but like just looking miserable, getting on that scale and almost looking at each other like, I feel you, bro. It was real, man. We were just big for the weight class, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense to me, man. Okay, let's kind of cut to coaching career and the things that you're doing now at UVA. Tell me the type of kid that best fits the culture there right now. And again, I'm not talking about 6-8 years ago when you started over there. I'm talking about now, because it's a different program than when you took over. What does your ideal recruit look like in 2024?
Yeah, so a guy named Nick Hamilton. Nick last year as a redshirt freshman for us. Won the ACC championship. He was voted most outstanding wrestler. And he just got this year, he's now in the business school, the McIntyre School of Commerce, which at one point was the #1 ranked undergraduate business program in America. I think it's number 5 right now. Don't quote me on that. I want some coach to text me later. It's number 6, but
all right, we got
very good. Yeah, it's very good.
Good.
Yeah, it's very good. And he's got a 3.6. But here's the point. His father passed away after he signed with us. And he doesn't have a relationship with his mother. He's a true orphan. He's completely emancipated. It's a no excuse guy that does everything right, that eats right, sleeps right, trains right, cares about school and studies hard, never makes excuses, and shows up to work every single day. Because here's the thing, and this is going to sound so uppity, elitist. This place is really hard academically. It's really hard. And I'm not trying to be a jerk, but other programs don't have to deal with that. They just don't. Most. I mean, look, I've had amazing assistant coaches who are now head coaches. Keith Gavin, Jordan Lean, Alex Clemson, Manny Rivera, stop me anytime, right? It's like, I got the Paulsons here now. I got Ian Park, all these great wrestle heads, with the exception of Lean, because he was at Cornell. They all were the same thing. As they're like, wow, it was a, I don't want to say shock, but it was definitely an adjustment, realizing how serious it is here academically. So, and you don't have to be the sharpest tool in the shed either. I certainly wasn't, but you have to be able to really, truly commit to working. You got to put away time for that. And you got to say, you know what, I'm going to max out on that too, because that matters to me. And it doesn't matter like, how much I can brag about my GPA. It matters the type of effort I put in. So that, and then toughness, dealing with adversity. This place is it's a beautiful place. I would say it's one of the most gorgeous places in America. And I've been a lot of places, but there's also a lot of distractions, right? So you have to be able to have mental, sort of your why needs to be right. You need to have the most mental toughness enough to say, I'm not going to do that. Discipline to me is, to steal Rob Cole's line, you are who you are when nobody is looking. And discipline is making the hard decision when no one's around. And so when you're walking home to the wrestling house, you can go left to Rugby Road, or keep going straight to Main Street and go to where all the bars are, right? Or you can take the right and go where your house is and go to sleep, and that's a tough decision when mom and dad aren't around. So I want to recruit guys who want to make that decision, because one of my overall sort of, not even closet goals, because I'm pretty vocal about it, is I want to have a program where you can have a great, amazing college experience without drugs and alcohol, where you can have a great college experience with fellowship and fun and development and all these cool things and experiencing things without that. And so Hamilton's on board for that. And guys like our team right now, we have a lot of work to do in a lot of ways, but that's one thing about this team that I think we're in a really good place. It's not perfect by any means, but we're in a really good place. Like the Geoffrey brothers, these other guys who we have on the team, they've all bought into that. So that's the guy. And oh, by the way, and this sounds so corny, I want a guy who actually loves wrestling. Hamilton loves wrestling, smart as he is, as much work. I mean, he's really serious about his grades. We got him an internship already set up for the summer. And he's doing it here so that way he can train with us. But that dude loves wrestling. And there's people that say they love wrestling, brother, but they don't. They love what wrestling gives them. They love the glory. They love how winning makes them feel. They love what they get out of it. Maybe there's a scholarship involved, and they know the game and know you can't take it if they don't screw up. And they also love that daddy and mommy tell them they're great. I mean, they don't. I want a guy who's really, truly loves it and studies it, and he's into it, and he wants to grow in it, and that he's in it for the right reasons and the relationships and all that good stuff. And that's what you got in a kid like him. So that would, I love how you said, without going back, because I can go back to Nick Solzers of the world and George Pillows and Jack Mueller's, but just currently right now, I would say right now, and is a guy we're trying to all the guys to be like. So
here's the question then. I love the fact that, okay, I enjoy doing this. Not just I'm good at it, because that's a different thing. Because there's a lot of kids that are really good at this and they hate this sport. Hate this sport.
And you can feel it on them when you meet them. They're just aura.
That's what I'm getting at. How do you, I'm sure you've been tricked before, as have I.
Yeah.
But how do you find those kids that, what are indicators that you can use to say, okay, this kid, he lost in the round of 64 at Super 32, but daggone it, he wrestled his butt off on his way back. Yeah. He was hopping and skipping to the mat, wasn't dragging ass. He those are indicators to me. Do you have some indicators that when you meet a kid, you go, oh, this kid really digs this, or he says he like it, he just likes winning? There's a big difference.
Man, it's hard. I would argue that's the hardest thing for any recruiter to figure out. If you're not going after the number one guy, the Bo Bassett's of the world, pretty obvious.
Sure.
pretty obvious what he
Makes
loves.
it pretty
Right? I
obvious.
mean,
Yeah,
that dude
yeah,
did
yeah.
it for the reckoning. He
Mhm.
loves the process, right? But not everybody's like that, to your point. And yeah, I've been hoodwinked and I've screwed up. I've made too many mistakes. Trying to learn from the mistakes they indicated to me. One is this: hey man, I haven't seen you compete. You're not competing. Well, I don't have anything to prove, coach. It's like, no. You don't have to prove. Not about proving. Fargo's not about proving yourself. Man, it's a great opportunity to get great matches. It's awesome. What a great experience. Who doesn't like going to Fargo and feeling that? You know, I actually took third out there. I didn't win it, but I remember like it was my only big tournament in high school. I remember being like so blown away that I got to breathe the same air as everybody. I was just in the room. I was in it. You know, it was like what a competitor's dream. And so what you're trying to look for is a true competitor is not worried about what he's going to get out of it. Ranking, scholarship. He's in it because he wants to compete. And like Jordan Lean, you know, and the Paulsons, for example, they say this all the time. Trent and Travis Paulson I want to compete against the best guy to see where I'm at. I want to see how I do against the dude because I want to be the dude. You know, Trent Paulson still beats everybody's hiney every single day in the room. The dude's 42 years old. I've never seen him get taken down if he doesn't want to. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, that's how that's how competitive he is and how tough he is and how gifted he is and how serious he takes it. So he wants everybody else around him to be like that too. He wants them to say, man, it's about testing yourself. It's about how good what are you going to get on the back end of this? I'm going to be better for it. So I think that's probably one thing you try to look at. And then to your point, there's the other one. I love what you said about wrestlebacks. Like there's tons of some of my toughest dudes I've ever coached were blood round guys at high school nationals back when when it was a really good tournament. It wasn't like 8,000, kids.
I know where you're going.
Yeah. So, they lost a heartbreaker and they got right back up the next day and couldn't think about anything else other than what they need to do different. Some of the toughest kids I've coached are guys who weren't the highest ranked recruit. Myself, I was a nobody, right? I wasn't the highest ranked guy. So, those guys are so hungry. And whereas I've actually had guys who were huge ranked recruits who, to your point, when they got here, it wasn't the same fire. Not to badmouth anybody. I got to be careful, but it wasn't the same fire.
Yeah, no, you see that more times than I'd like to count. Yeah. What are the big red flags then? What are the big he lost in the quarters and or lost in the semis, did the semi slide, or what are the things that you look for? You go, oh, that's not good.
Man, that's hard. Yeah, I think, some guys, not the semi slide necessarily. If you're battling and you keep losing, if it's really, if the effort's there, it's the guys who they just don't wrestle at all. They default out or they're, they just disappear, or usually, and I got to be careful again here, but dads usually make excuses for their kids. Nobody can make an excuse faster for their child than a parent. I mean, it's just, it's almost borderline mental delusion or something, like some psychological term for it, where I've never heard a parent ever be able to be truly honest, really honest. Like I'm talking like really, there's always, well, then but then there's always a but, or there's always an excuse, or there's always, well, he was sick, or there's always, yeah, but you didn't, he needs a better workout partner. And you, there's never, no, he did this and it's not okay. Like, for example, and look, I remember I broke one time in college in a match, and my best friend in the world, Jim Harshaw at the time, he called me out in front of the whole team. And it was an awful moment for me, but the best moment, because the only way you can change something is if you call it out. You can't change a problem if you don't admit you have one. And you can't you can't grow from something if you don't face it head on. And right there, I had to face something that had never happened to me before. And I'm saying, I don't ever want this to happen again. Right. And
tell me what happened during the match that you say you broke.
Oh, dude, it was the first time I wrestled strip matter at Midlands. He was at Pitts Johnstown. He took third that year at Midlands. We wrestled in the blood round at Midlands. I lost to Cody Sanderson in the quarters, and then wrestled strip matter in the blood round. And back then when you were training, like over Christmas break, it was insane. Like I would go to the YMCA with the Mansueto brothers and my twin brother, who was nuts, just like, because my brother was so tough. He wasn't even wrestling anymore. It was like, but I knew he'd fight me. Like, he was just so tough. Like, we would throw crash pads down on the floor at the YMCA. Dude, the YMCA, like, we had nowhere to train, no coaching, it was awful. And so I was definitely not properly trained, but it shouldn't have mattered. Like, you're either going to get mentally tough and make a decision or you're not. And in that match, I think it was like crazy match, like 8-8 or 9-9, whatever the score was. It was a lot of scoring. And I just started to, like, mentally and physically just get, exhausted. And I'd never felt that type of exhaustion before. And guess what, though? We tell our guys all the time now, well, that's when you think you don't have more, you do. And when you think you can't go more, you can. and you got to, and it's all about making that decision right there, what you're going to do next. And so, and I remember falling apart there, and that call out though made me face it, because I was ashamed that I let my friends down. I was ashamed that I embarrassed myself in my program. I was ashamed, and that shame is a good thing in a certain way.
Sure.
And then I could start making changes. So with small decisions over a long period of time, then sure enough, I wrestle, in the quarterfinals of nationals a couple of years later, and I started feeling the same type of exhaustion. It's the same crazy match. It's reversal and takedown, and it's going crazy. It's 9-9. And because I'd been there, and because I'd faced that demon, and because I, made a decision, I'm going to keep going. I just shot first. It wasn't even a good shot. If you watch the film back, it's ugly as heck. But I'm like, I'm going. I'm not going out. Like, I'm going. And then you start. It's like, but that's a decision. That's a good thing. It's like, I'm going to make a decision that I'm not going to go back there again. And as soon as guys start realizing that, that's when they can grow past that. But here's my point. Sorry, here's my point. A lot of parents are like, well, no, I don't know what happened. Here's the one I get all the time. That was weird. I don't even know what happened. That was so weird. No, it's not weird, dude. You've actually done it before. What are you going to do about it this time? Like, you have to face this. It hurts, but here's why we don't. It hurts too bad. But you got to, man. Part of life is, I just did a quote the other day when Tony Bennett, our famous basketball coach here, retired. It's like, hard truth is the currency of a good culture. Hard truth is the currency of a good culture. Just like forgiveness is the currency in the kingdom of God, my pastor says. Well, hard truth is the currency of a good wrestling program. And if you don't face the hard truth with no excuses, no more buts, you got to fix this. You, not mom, not dad, not coach, not workout partner, not I got to get a new program. I need an ideal. I need this. I need that. I have to change this. No more external things. And as soon as we start doing that as humans, we're all going to be better in every area of life. Heck with just wrestling.
Yeah.
I'm curious, you talked about, the importance of small decisions and small things that you do on a daily basis, and those adding up. How do you keep the focus with an athlete when they're doing everything right, but maybe the results aren't happening yet? I think oftentimes, when you see someone changing things in their life, the results will lag behind the changes that they're making. How do you kind of keep the focus and keep them moving in the right direction when maybe they aren't getting the immediate result that they hope for?
Man, that's tough. The first story that came into my head when you said it, I had a kid named Stephen Doty, who was awesome. Another one of those kids, blood round loss guy, NHSCA's, won one state championship finally his senior year at Missouri, came here as basically a recruited walk-on, and he ended up being one of the toughest kids I ever coached. But I remember his second year, he was in the corner of the room weeping. And this is one of the toughest kids I've ever coached, physically, mentally, everything. The dude's nuts. And I walk over to him. I'm like, not you, Steve. Like, what's going on here? Like, what?
Say it ain't so.
Yeah. I'm like, no, man. And I was like, so shocked. I was like, brother, what's up? And I just came to faith in the Lord, and me and him were growing together, and we were doing Bible studies together and praying for each other. So I could talk pretty frankly to him. And he just looked at me and goes, when's it going to happen? And I didn't get it at first. I go, what do you mean? He goes, when, coach? When? I just got beat up again by so-and-so. When am I, with all this work I'm doing, you see me every day, when's it going to pay off? And man, he stunned me with that one. And I was just like, oh, my heart, because I didn't have something. You're like, oh, it might not, but but at the time, I'm like, you know what? I forget exactly what I said, but it was something to the effect of, well, man, the hardest thing in the world for any man is patience, but we serve a patient God who's patient with us. So you be patient with this process. If you believe he's in control, then you got to believe he's in control of this. So now we have to be patient. One of the craziest things about when I study the Old Testament, talks about how patient and long-suffering God is with all his people. And it's like, so then we have to be like that too. If we're representing him in this world, then we need to be patient. I think it's the hardest thing in the world to do. And so you try to dig into him about patience and persistence, perseverance, what that actually looks like. I mean, look, here's an example I used the other day. David was anointed by Samuel as king when he was probably 10 years old. He didn't get anointed officially as king and serve as king of Judah until he was 30. Dude, that's 20 years he waited. 20 years. You imagine waiting 20 years to get a goal, Mike? Shoot. Right?
Yeah.
That's hard, but that's reality.
But to put that into terms, like, it's not going to hit today.
No.
It's not.
No. And that was the hard thing that made him cry worse. It's not going to be today.
and I'm dealing with that. I'm dealing with that right now. My son loves the sport. He freaking loves it. He's really into it. He's just not getting the success. Like he sees the guys with the national rankings. He sees the guys in his room that are winning these Super 32s. He sees it. But what he doesn't realize, because he's in it, right? He's like in the middle of it, is like Angelo Posada didn't start as a freshman. Angelo Posada didn't, like these guys that are at UNC now, Elias Navita, who won a state title, he didn't even start as a sophomore, dude. You're in a pretty good position right now. Like, wrestling's really hard. It's really hard. And like and that said, he went to Journeyman and he got his tail kicked in. Like, he got lumped up. And he's losing to guys that are ranked number 17, 18 in the country. And he's going, when is it going to be my turn? And I'm sitting there going, you're doing it the right way. As long as you just kind of trust in everything's fine. It's going to be your turn, I promise. Because there's no way not to. Like, he's not the most talented kid in the world, but he works his tail off. And you can get there. You can get there with a little bit of a talent and a tremendous amount of work. And he's willing to put in the work now, So it's a challenging thing as a dad to have to go, hey, look, and this is a conversation that we have, right? Like, because he's crying on my shoulder. He's, he went 1-4 at Journeyman, and he's crying on my shoulder. I go, do you want me to be dad right now, or do you want me to be coach? And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, let me do this. I'll tell you the coach part first. The coach part is, listen, you're doing the right things. You got to have patience in this process. You have to, right? Yep. You just got to know that you're doing all the right things right now. And as a dad, I love you. Doesn't matter. Like, I already won. Yeah. I already won. Yeah. So like, I tell him that all the time. Like, I already won. He hates when I say this too. He absolutely despises it because he feels as though he puts so much work in that I should be as emotionally invested in his winning as he is. But I already won, dude. The kid works, but he learned how to work. He learned how to put the time in. What else is there?
You can share this with him. Before George DiCamillo went out in the semifinals of nationals, right before he went out, I said, George, you've already won, so go win. You've already won, so go win. And what I mean by that is we already won is, to your point, I couldn't agree more, coaches. Your parents are going to love you no matter what. I'm going to love you no matter what.
Yeah.
Like, your future wife's going to love you no matter what. Like,
sure.
Everything, God's going to absolutely, I promise you, your standing in his eyes does not change if you don't win this match. You've already won, so go win. And what a great place to be, man. And he went out and wrestled awesome and made the finals. It's like that's So I don't know if maybe your son needs to hear it from somebody else, because sometimes dad, like, I know my 19-year-old doesn't listen to anything I say. I'm the dumbest dude in the world, even though I went to the same school he's currently attending. I couldn't tell you anything. It's like during the college process, I'm like, this is like kind of like the only thing I know how to do, let me help you with this. Nope. She's like, shut up, moron, Right. So I think maybe if they hear from, she didn't go so far as say moron, but
no.
The point is like, maybe if they hear that type of story, it's like exactly what dad said is what another coach said to his kid right before he made the NCAA championship match. Yeah. By the way, to your point about patience, guys, to answer your question, George DiCamillo was lost in the blood round every year prior to that, 3 years in a row. He was 0-3 and then finally broke through. How about that for endurance and patience? You want to talk about your heart rate the whole match? You're like, please.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. In your estimation, have parents gotten better or worse over the course of the last 15 years or so in kind of coaching these kids through this process that is wrestling in high school and going into college?
Yeah, personally, I totally think that parents have gotten worse in this way. They've gotten better in this way, that parents are amazing and that they provide a lot for their children. They'll do anything for their kids. And I've been so encouraged and inspired by that. I've met a lot of great parents in that way. They'll do anything for them. They love them hard. They're there for them. And, our generation, my generation, we didn't have a lot of that. It was a lot on your own. I mean, start when you're a little kid. Hey, you play till 8 o'clock at night. When it gets dark, you come home. Like, it's a totally different world now.
Yeah.
And it's good and bad, So I think I praise the parents on that. Where I think they've gone wrong, terribly wrong, is the excuses and the constant, it's always external. It's never the kid's fault. There's always something to point to. What does that teach your son? right? There's always something. It's never the kid's fault. There's not one thing he could have done different. It's always and they're just dumbfounded. They're just, don't tell me my son can't do it's bizarre. Why'd you pick over him? Why is this guy starting? What I want to know what's going on down there. It's like, well, wait a second. Like, I love your son.
Yeah.
That's all my kids. I love them. But that doesn't mean that this other guy is not the guy that we believe is going to give us the best chance to win in this position. You're right.
Sure.
That's a tough place to be as a coach. Or when a guy's struggling at school or discipline. Here's an example. Over the years, 25 years this is 24 years straight of doing this. This is my year 25. You know how many times we've had kids screw up? It happens. They're kids. They're 18 to 22 males. That's an unstable group of human, and you're going to have right?
That's a very nice way of putting it.
Very unstable and a lot of way, right? So you're going to have stuff that happens. But every time it happens, it's bizarre to me that the way the parents react. And I know they got to support their son. Just like you said to your son, hey, son, I love you no matter what. Of course you're going to love them. But how about freaking ripping into them? How about telling them, like, there's just, instead of worrying about, well, what are you going to do to them? What's the penalty? Like, why don't we actually teach this kid together? Why don't we work together to teach him to correct the behavior? Let's attack the why. Why did this lead up to this? Let's not go through the excuses and the lies and the.
And you think that this is happening more now than it had in the past? Is that
I
correct?
personally think it's exponentially different. Yeah, I think there's an entirely different generation of human that's raising kids. It just is.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, dang it. Like, well, here's an example. My wife is, talk about generation. She's almost 50. So she's in that our world, right?
Sure.
She's seen some stuff, been through some stuff. And I won't say who, but a family member extremely close to her went to federal prison. And I thought it was hardcore, maybe too hardcore, but I'm like, you going to go see him? And she goes, he made his decision. Grown man. I'll see him when he gets out. Oof. Like that's I'm not saying that's right, by the way, but I'm saying
but that's
the difference, and that's the way she was raised. Is like there's a line. Steve, guess what? I got the truck packed up in 2007, I think it was. You change or I'm gone. That's all there is to it. So one of the greatest things that God used to lead me to the cross was like that moment right there. You want to talk about humbling? What's right is right. You change, I'm gone. Those are the options. And so I feel like we need to get back to a little bit more of let's keep it simple, stupid, and let's make sure we attack the issue. If a kid has a drinking problem, let's dig into why. If a kid's making behavioral decisions, let's quit letting them off the hook and let's dig into this. And maybe a real consequence is the only thing that snaps them out of it,
That's where I'm at with it. There is a distinct ignorance for consequence. There is an ignorance for you goofed up, you have to pay the piper. You goofed up. Like it's okay. And that's the only way to learn. And we see that, I see it a ton at a high school level with kids. The easiest example is quite simply in the classroom now, because it's not just from the parents. Hey, this kid didn't do any of his homework and missed the test. You're going to give him another shot? No, absolutely not.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
So how about this? My daughter, she failed PE. My daughter is the most athletic person in my household right now. No questions asked. The girl, she didn't fail, but she got a failing grade in PE. And it's because she didn't want to get in the pool at 7 a.m. because it was cold. Okay. And then the teacher, my wife called the teacher and just asked her about it. And she always made some kind of excuse why she didn't want to get in the pool at 7:30 a.m. And she said, well, if she comes in this coming Saturday at noon, she can make up the test in the water and we'll bring her grade up. And nope, absolutely not. Nope. She made her bed. She's going to lie in it. Absolutely. So she got a C in PE, right? She's like, who gets a freaking C in phys ed? Like, come on, dude. Like, and so, but the lesson was, hey, you goofed. You told your teacher that it was, that time of the month and you didn't want to get in the pool. Or you told your teacher that it was, whatever, and you had the sniffles and you didn't want to get in the pool. Now you pay for it. Sorry. Yeah. And I think there's a distinct lack of consequence.
Sure.
in a lot of these people's lives. And it's kind of scary, to be honest with you, because they're ill-equipped.
Yeah, no. And it's insane. Like, with wrestling, everybody right now is faced with this roster cap, and it's scary, and it's already keeps me up at night, literally. I mean, I remember going through this during COVID where we had to make cuts, and it's just sometimes though you just go right to the record. You're like, okay, so the young man is 2-11 or something, right? Probably gonna have to that guy, right?
Yeah.
There's not one parent on earth that's not going to write me a letter and tell me how much of a terrible person I am, and or call me, and or come to my office and try to rip my head off.
Right.
And yet the young man doesn't mean he's a bad kid. It means he's probably an awesome kid, but he's not winning. He's not performing. Poor performance is just like me. I can get fired tomorrow for performance. Right? That's something that every single day you live with. But so I love the reason why I said that is what you said about they're not equipped. Well, how does that equip them for life that they somehow got screwed when everybody that goes to the tournament has the same chance?
Yeah.
If you took last and didn't place and the other guy took third, the guy who took third is probably not going to make the cut, right? I mean, so that's another concept that I don't think that that's what I've seen change. Over the years, it's changed. Like when I first started in this business in 2000, parents were crazy back then too, but they also got it though. Like, well, I mean, the one guy went to the tournament, one guy won it, the other guy didn't play. Well, it looks like we know who the guy is. You know? Now there's always, well, what I'll tell you, you see what I
tougher tie of the bracket.
Yeah. See his effort, whatever.
Yeah, it's wild. Can we talk briefly about some of the changes that are going on in the NCAA right now, and your, one of the things that I love about NCAA coaches is, and the best ones, right? Not all of them, but the best ones, is that you guys have an ability to see around corners. What are you seeing right now? Because it's gonna get wild soon.
Yeah. So me and Keith Gavin just talked today about the landscape. It's as scary a landscape as I've seen in 24 years of doing it. And I'm not trying to be dramatic when I say that. I'm not trying to get clicks and get people. It's as scary as it gets because you have a system now that is so, in my humble opinion, broken, flawed, skewed. Everything is football and basketball. So all the schools, the Power 4 schools, you're going to opt in. Our schools opt in. Everybody's opting. They want to win. I mean, we just put $80 million into a football operations center here, right? We'll put another 40 into an Olympic sports complex. Like these people our donors invested a lot of money. UVA invested a lot of money in facilities. So what brings in the money is those sports. It's become such a business, and it's always been a business, but there's always been that balance. I think now it's the model now, and then with this settlement, now it's moving everything to that revenue share, 25 additional scholarships. We have to be able to have money for this, and well, then where does it come from?
Right. That's what everyone it keeps on. Where is it going
where does it
to
come from? At some point, it's like enough's enough. You can't get that. Even if the school chips in with such and such millions of dollars, we're looking at a huge number, minimum $22 to $30 million per school, probably, right? And that's before other bells and whistles. Yeah. So then with NIL and now you got that in the landscape. So it's as scary as it gets. And look, all these administrators, they have really tough decisions to make. And so even for guys like me, I grew up in the Ivy League model where all we think about is raising money all day long. I feel like I'm really proud of what our donors have done, and I'm proud of the money we've raised through not just the UVA specific accounts and the endowments and all the things we've done, but also the RTC, all these things we've done. Guess what though? That number, let's say all in, let's say I got $6 million in the account. That's a fraction of what you need to be endowed. We would need 12 more million to be endowed. So if it's not just Steve Garland, every school now look at Pitt, now look at all the other schools in the conference, the ACC, look at Chapel Hill. Me and Rob talked about this a while back, Coach Cole. Even though we've all been, the fundraising thing is, because Keith worked for me. He knows the deal. You got to be always doing it. When you're talking about numbers like that, it gets scary. And now that being said, the positive is no athletic director wants to drop sports. Our athletic director certainly doesn't. I've talked to her about it. And I guess, a lot of these ADs are saying that on record. They want the opportunities for kids. They're in it for the right reasons for the most of them, I would think, I would hope. I know our AD truly believes in education and opportunities for, she loves wrestling because she knows that our kids come from a lower middle class for the most part. We have a lot of diversity on our team. We got great kids from all over the country with all different backgrounds and all different walks of life and all different histories, and they can all get the same degree that changes their life. We have the
Sure.
highest the best return on investment of any public university that sponsors wrestling. And according to certain studies, we have the highest average starting salary. That changes a kid's life. Not that life's all about
Sure.
money, but it's certainly, I've never seen anybody angry on a jet ski, my friend.
Mm.
You know, it's like,
True story.
it certainly helps, right?
Yeah, it
And
doesn't hurt.
so our AD and other ADs want that for these kids. But the question is, well, then how the heck do you do it? And what this settlement has done is it forced people into situations where, oh my goodness, what do we do now? How do we navigate this?
Mm-hmm.
And so
In your estimation, are we going to lose Division I wrestling teams in the next 12 months?
man, I hope we don't lose, but they're going to be dramatically different. Like
In what way?
what's happening at Campbell or what's happening, you know, I could foresee teams dropping scholarships. Like instead of being at 9.9, you're going to be at 6. Instead of being at 9.9, you're going to be at 3. Instead of, you know, or we're going to do back to Ivy League model where when I was in the Ivies, it was all financial aid, schools that are really good base aid schools. You know, maybe that's what happens. And I just see you have to come up with that dough somehow, some way. Now, fundraisers, and I know that when backs are against the wall, like our people, like during COVID, stepped up mightily. We got a whole new wrestling complex during one of the worst economic times in U.S. history, right?
Right.
We had generous donors gave us $1.3 million to transform an old pool from the 1930s into a wrestling facility we enjoy now. So people do step up. So I think you'll see that too. That's the positive is when your back's against the wall, you come out swinging. I think the wrestling people are going to rally around. They're going to get serious. I mean, one of my ex-wrestlers, Chris Henrik, who's a 3-time All-American for me, he's a vice president of a huge company on Wall Street right now. He's doing pretty well for himself. He texted me last night about it. That's a guy who, if you're watching, he needs to be involved and get in on this and say, hey, you're a very smart guy. How do we rally the troops so that way we're secure? And then the life-changing opportunity, and I really mean that sincerely, I think our program gives kids, how do we keep going?
Yeah. All right. We are running up on time right now. But I would love the chance to sit down and talk for about an hour about fundraising specifically, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
It's a lot, dude.
Because there's so many different facets to it. Like just brushing up on it in 15 minutes at the end of a podcast does not do it justice. There is an entire world out there that I don't know that, and we talk about being ill-equipped. I don't know that every college coach right now is equipped to deal with the landscape that's coming forward in the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, I would say communication and engagement. The second part is cultivation, making and expressing a vision that people actually believe in. And the last part is not just making an ask. It's truly having people believe in you. You know, people give to people. They don't give to ideas. They give to people. And that's something I learned at an early age in this business. But here's the thing, brother, it takes so much time.
Yeah.
And I don't know if a lot of coaches want to do that. I know for me, this summer, I spent 80% of my time in this space and I almost lost my mind. I actually packed the kids up and my wife, and we went down to Disney World because I was seriously about to jump off, the roof of my house. I'm like, holy, I need to see Mickey. I need to get out of here. I was like, Epcot Center, tacos. I lost my mind. I was all I thought about was raising one. Like, we got to get people educated. We got to let them know what's going on. So it takes a lot of work. And that's the thing about any human being or any business. If you're going to do something, it's going to take a lot of work. So that's my caution. It's going to take a lot of work.
We literally sat down with Coach Dresser last night, and he said the exact same thing. He said, there's zero surprises. There's no secrets. It's just, you gotta do the work.
Yeah.
You gotta do the work. Okay.
He's probably one of the best at it. So there you go.
He's one of the best. He's for sure. And it's funny. He's so humble about it too. He's like, I'm no expert. I'm like, man, you kind of are. Like, you sort of are. You're pretty good at this, dude. You've been doing it at a high level. You did it at Christiansburg High School, dude. Like, you were raising 6 figures at Christiansburg High School. Forget about you or Virginia Tech, and forget about Iowa State. You did it at a high school level when nobody else was doing that, right? I mean, Blair Academy had a slush fund that was just replenished every year by God only knows who. So it's like it's hard to compete with that. But you were doing it at Christiansburg High School. That's pretty darn good, man. Sure. But anyway, all right, let's move on to these quick questions. Try not to think too much about them. Just fire off an answer. Here we go. What is the best wrestling shoe of all time?
Man, the old John Smiths back in the day. Remember those?
Yes, absolutely. The black and green. Oh, those were the best.
Yeah, those are the bomb, man. Heck yeah.
I love those.
I don't know how anyone could not say that.
Yeah, dude. So I was an Adidas guy growing up for sure.
Me too.
I love the combat speeds. Love the combat speeds. And okay, next one. You only get 4, and they got to be American. Who is on your Mount Rushmore of wrestling?
Wow, Jordan Burroughs, Kyle Schneider, John Smith.
Mm-hmm.
I want to throw something out there that's crazy. Everyone's
I love it.
Bruce Baumgartner. I don't think.
No, it's not crazy. No, it's not crazy, dude.
Bruce
Bruce has, what is he, 13 medals, something like that.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's pretty.
I looked up to him a lot growing up. Yeah,
quite literally, most people do.
Yeah,
He's a big boy.
Bruce is in 5th in our running tally.
Sweet. Well, I wasn't that far off. Okay.
No.
Yeah, our top 4: John Smith, Jordan Burroughs, Cale Sanderson, Dan Gable.
Love it. Okay, last one, and this is tricky. You get a magic wand, and you can change one thing about the sport of wrestling, and it changes tomorrow. What would it be?
I would change the weight classes. 125.
Really?
Be humane for a grown man. Don't ever
Preach.
we still need we can just keep 10, but why not just move it up 5 pounds? 30.
I don't even know. Here's the thing that drives me crazy. Okay, what's the point? Who are we appeasing by?
We want to see the best wrestlers. It doesn't matter what they look, how much weight, how much they can suffer. Come on, man.
Yeah, 100%. 125, 57 kilo is beyond.
So stupid.
It's beyond me. I'm going. Who? Look, save like 3. Like if you look at the curve of people in this world, save like 3 Asian countries. Nobody has 125-pound human males. They just don't. They just don't. So what are we talking about? Why is this such a thing? It's nonsense.
This is a terrible thing to end the podcast on. But I remember in my childhood, I had a guy. It was a street fight situation. It won't go any further than that. But the guy, one of the worst lines anyone's ever said to me that totally punked me in my place. He goes, "Dude, I date girls bigger than you."
Dang it!
Right before we're about to scrap, I was like, "Come on, man, that one hurt."
All right, that was pretty good. You got that one.
Like, oh man, that one stuck with me.
That's phenomenal, by the way. Yeah, so I don't even know if we need the 10 weight classes. Boggles my mind too, because you're a head coach at a major institution. Can you tell me the 4th criteria? Because I don't know what it is.
No.
Yeah. Okay. So the point is, if we went to 9, or for those of you that, well, we can't take away weight classes. All right, we'll go to 11. We'll go to 11 weight classes. Who wins the more weights? Okay, you win. Period.
Yeah.
The end.
Yeah, that's pretty simple, actually. Yeah.
Jeez Louise. We shoot ourselves in the foot at every turn. Anyway, that's here nor there. Yeah. Coach Garland, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing as much as you did, man. It really, really is important that everyone kind of hears this stuff. Thank you so much for coming on, brother.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Have a great day, man.
All right. Wait. Don't go anywhere. Before you hit that next button, if you enjoyed listening to this episode, do us a huge favor. Click that subscribe button. And if you're so inclined, leave a review and share it.